afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Omaha Table Talk on food insecurity and cultivating sustainable resources. We're so excited to have this conversation and have so many people either on Zoom or in the room with us. My name is Dominic Green. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm the Director of Programs and Faculty at Inclusive Communities. And before we start, I would like to do acknowledge the traditional homelands of the Native and Indigenous people who have lived and continue to live on the land that we gather upon today. These lands were originally inhabited by the Omaha, Ponca, Pawnee, Oto Missouri, Sante Dakota Sioux, Kansas, Iowa, Cheyenne, and Winnebago people. We take this time to acknowledge the past, present, and future of Indigenous people and to recognize their ever-present systemic inequities stemming directly from the past wrongdoings and strive to commit ourselves indefinitely to respecting and reconciling this long history of injustice for all peoples. For those of you who might be new to Omaha Table Talks, OTTs, as we call them, was initially recreated in Omaha in 2003 by the Social Justice Advisory Committee of Catholic Charities Omaha. And in 2012, Inclusive Communities acquired OTTs and shifted them into this larger public format over discussions with comfort food. There is food being set up in the back here. So once it's there and ready, feel free to grab some. We have shifted to our new hybrid format, as you can see. So every table talk that we have, there will be an in-person option, but also an option for folks who need to Zoom in so that you don't have to miss a conversation if it's challenging for you to get here in person. I would like to thank our sponsors, Cox Communication, Low Zero Foundation, American Family Insurance, for allowing and making it possible to hold these conversations. And also like to thank our ASL interpreters, Pam and Jamie, and our Spanish language interpreters who are online, I believe, for helping us out and making these more accessible to all people. We have a few facilitators at tables as well. Thank you so much for being here and helping us out. And with that, I'm just reading through my notes. I think that's all the items that I need to get through before we pass it over to Lori, who will moderate our conversation today.
Thanks, Dominic, and thank you everyone for being here. It's great to see such a good crowd, both online and in person. My name is Lori Tatreau. I'm with the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. I'm going to moderate today this amazing group of people to talk about food insecurity and food security. Going to ask everyone to just briefly tell me your name, your organization name, and how you are connected to this topic.
Hey everybody, my name is Christensen. I'm a 5th generation family farmer from about 1 hour north of here, Oakland, Nebraska. Bell Creek runs through our farm. Bell Creek runs into the Logan Creek, into the Elkhorn River, into the Platte River, into the Missouri River, into the Mississippi, and dumps out into the Gulf Coast. What happens here happens there. Omaha Wa'aite, that is the Omaha word for this creek. It stands for where the Omaha grow. So have big obligations as we're looking on our farm and how we treat this land that was Omaha land first. I'm also the president and founder of GC Resolve. It's a communications and consulting group. And GC Resolve works on normalizing environmental and equity issues. It has a space in the bridge building and has also been part of the connective tissue for the Regenerate Nebraska network. I want to thank Inclusive Communities because Inclusive Communities had an initial role in helping the envisioning process as a founding network member that allowed us to create a vision statement that was inclusive. And Tina Han Rodriguez of Inclusive Communities actually helped lead and moderate sessions on this conversation as we're learning from other communities in the state on how to move forward. So I'm thankful to be here today, and especially with this stellar group of colleagues at the table and Stephanie on Zoom.
Awesome. Thanks, Graham. Hi, everybody. I'm Talia McGill. I am the Chief Operating Officer at No More Empty Pots. I love to say that this topic hits me both professionally and personally. Personally, raised in a single parent home, so making choices about what food, how food, and then also as an athlete. So learning over time about how good food nourishes the body, what you need to thrive, to be a good student, to be a good athlete. But professionally now, bringing that and health and wellness paths for 10 years together in nonprofit, I'm learning a lot about how it starts really young, and thinking about when I was really young and how I wish I would have known what I know now and where I could have been had you had those necessities in such a different way. So I'm really connected to this from a health and wellness perspective, but also just for that access for children. So that's my story.
Thanks. I'm Alynn Sampson, and I am with the Food Bank of Lincoln, currently the VP of Operations and Impact. Our organization represents one of 2 food banks here in Nebraska. We are part of the largest nonprofit, Feeding America, which represents 199 food banks across the country. We are tasked with addressing food insecurity through a variety of ways, whether it's through mobile pantries, agency network. We are here to work to address the 188,000 that are identified as food insecure in Nebraska.
Thank you. And Stephanie?
Hello, I'm Stephanie Finklea. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. Excuse me. I am the owner operator of Black Chick Farm. It is a mini micro farm operated right here in my home in North Omaha, and recently purchased a plot of land a couple blocks away. But Black Chick Farm is not a destination, it's a directive sent upon me from my ancestors. Indigenous to Africa and enslaved African Americans brought to this land. And I started Black Chick Farm because I wanted to form a relationship with the land and encourage others to do so as well. I think that reconnecting with land is how we can reclaim our roots as African Americans and build relationships with each other in healthier and more sustainable ways. Growing and access to food became really important to me because I started doing farm to table eating out in restaurants and things like that. And I was like, why isn't this something that everybody has access to? Why does it feel elitist to do this? So that is why I do what I do.
Thank you, everyone. And I'll just mention that I've got about a 15 to 20 year history doing everything from organic farm apprenticeship to Whole Foods market forager for the Midwest. So I've seen it from all sides. And currently the Society of St. Vincent de Paul runs a choice food pantry, and we have free sack lunches at the Holy Family Community Center and that we pass out in East Omaha. So we're gonna start just with a few words from the panel on the concept of food insecurity, just so we're kind of on the same page.
Should I kick it off since I have the mic? Okay. Food insecurity for us at the food bank, I like to break it down as just more month than money, that your resources run out, that you don't know when or where your next meal is going to come from. Obviously, there's a USDA more official term, but we try to make it as easy to understand without a lot of professional language around really what does food insecurity mean. And for us, simply put, it's more month than money.
I would say that at No More Empty Pots, we think of food insecurity as equitable access. So while there may be food nearby, is it the same food that the person who may have more resources than you has access to? And so how do we make those things more equitable for everybody? And with that, also a lack of education around how to utilize those foods. So even if the food is accessible, if people don't have the skills to manipulate, to preserve, to stretch that, especially when their financial resources are low, how can they be expected to leverage those resources? And so we really try to look at both the educational side of it and then also that equitable access side.
It's really interesting. The rural perspective and narrative is that we're feeding the world. And that's what was pounded into our heads, over and over again as we're growing up, that we have this role in feeding the world. But as I got to get out of the country a little bit and meet a lot of other people and hear a lot of other influences, I saw that it didn't matter if you were in my own rural community or if you were in East Omaha or if you were on tribal lands, that we were mostly all facing food insecurity. We have a lack of access to nutrition. So GC Resolve, kind of at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, we led a couple of conversations. One of them was called Neglecting Nutrition. And what we found is that the three people who the current industrial agriculture model, the three groups of people that the current industrial model had preyed upon the most, who were dying or getting very sick from COVID-19, were most likely to be the Black community, the Indigenous community, and rural people. Those are the people that this pandemic had the most impact on, based on the numbers from those early parts of that. And that should send us a little signal right away that something is completely wrong, that there's food insecurity going on all over the place, and that people aren't getting access to that nutrition. It's about having control of that. And as my friends from the Malcolm X Foundation said, we don't just want access, we want sovereignty. This is the same thing that was echoed in tribal communities. We need to be able to get back at producing our own food if we're truly going to break these barriers. So help enable us to do this. And that is what we need to work together to do, to enable more pathways to this nutritional access for more people, because way too many people are getting left behind right now.
Thanks, Graham. You touched on a topic we're going to hit next, but let's hear from Stephanie and food insecurity. Any words to add?
Just to note that food insecurity is a man-created system. The earth gives and gives abundantly. I would rather use food apartheid because these systems were created and set in place to allow for insecurity to happen. So I would rather use food apartheid because it is an intentional man-created system. If we were in relationship with the earth, as the indigenous have shown us, it is possible to live in abundance.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So as Graham brought up the word food sovereignty, we want to talk about that concept because it's a little bit new to some people, I think. So can you add some more words about what that means to you?
Yeah, I think it's been mentioned in different ways, but like the thing that drives home for me the most is the choice. So being able to choose what you eat, where you grow it, how you grow it, to have the ability to recreate culturally appropriate foods in your own communities, and also to share those foods with other communities so that there's a learning experience that happens, so that there's more support around the needs of people who, maybe eat something that's not as known as the traditional Midwest crops, right? So just having that ability to choose how and where and when your food is produced and where it comes from, to know where it comes from, what you're putting in your body, and to be able to again, get that equitable access to the things that you choose that you want to have as nutritious sources.
Yeah, I don't think I would add much more to that. Something that we are trying to even just change the language on culturally affirming foods. We used to really hound on culturally appropriate, but what does that mean? And for us, it's how do we increase that equitable access? How do we ensure that we are conscious of where did this food come from? Where is it being grown? How do we get it here? What does it mean for the neighbors that we're serving? And is it affirming, or is it that idea that we are trying to push something to say, no, this is what is appropriate to be eating?
You, Stephanie, do you want to add anything about the concept of food sovereignty?
Yeah, reading into that word a little bit and reading in the definition of it, it's about self-governance, having control over all aspects of food, how it's grown, the seeds that are saved, how it's distributed and shared, having it be culturally appropriate. It encompasses all of those things, and having the people have the say in how it's done and how they have access to it is how I view food sovereignty.
That's great. Thanks. And Graham, any extra words on sovereignty?
Sovereignty, you don't have to be susceptible to what is being passed down. You're able to take control of your own community, your own self. And whether it is your diet or your culture, our bodies call for different things. And so do our traditions. And so being able to have control over these very simple things seem to me more like rights, but that's what food sovereignty is.
That's great. Thank you. So I'd love to move into the heart of why we're all here, is to hear the exciting work these folks are doing in the world of food sovereignty. I'd like to start with Stephanie, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Blazing Star Seed Cooperative, which is a local cooperative whose mission is to create a thriving seed-saving culture here in Omaha. They have a local seed bank where community members are able to come and just contribute saved seed. They do a seed school so that people can learn about how to save seeds. The seed of the year this year is one of my personal favorites, San Marzano. There's a seed share on February 11th at South Omaha Public Library from noon to 4. All are welcome to attend. Bring seed, take seed. Co-founder of Omaha Sunflower Cooperative, which is a Black, Indigenous, and other peoples of color cooperative farming organization. We were just gifted by City Sprouts about an acre of land where some other refugee farmers are currently growing. And so we see that as an act of repairing relationship between people of color and white-led organizations, nonprofits specifically, that redistribution of wealth. I think that's what I'm really most excited about and involved in. So if anybody else would like to take on.
So there's 2 projects that are focused on this food sovereignty initiative right now that Regenerate Nebraska is involved in. And it's working through and with some of our network partners. And one of our network partners is the Maya community, Pishanashim. And during COVID-19, the leader of Pishanashim, Luis Marcos, he came up and said, we're glad to be a part of this network, but I'm scared because a lot of the people in our tribe, they work in the meat packing plants, and we all know what was going on in there. And that there's even talks that the food may not be on the shelf in the grocers around the area. He said we have no control. We have to do something about this. So that led to an envisioning process that's really still going on. But there were goals set to be able to return sacred seeds, see what works here, be able to adopt, more clean varieties of seeds, and join others that are involved in CSA programs in the inner city and start being able to gain access to food that way. And there's some other pieces, but the larger vision was to lay down permanent roots in Nebraska on land owned by Maya people. And so through that process, we're looking at options on how we can be able to seek the land to enable that pathway. And then as a 5th generational farmer, try to be able to aid with the Maya community to ensure that this project is successful so that we can build upon it, so that we can show new model that works, so that we can be able to create and work with other communities that have the same desire to seek food sovereignty and have those pathways to the land. Some of these conversations are allowing us to have further conversations with other tribal members, other indigenous people from other tribes across this Missouri River Valley corridor, and seeing if there's a potential to start connecting these dots and aggregating products together that meet an indigenous governed set of standards. This is just the preliminary part of this bigger vision. So I hope to be able to come back here in a couple of years and share some real concrete stories. But this is the kind of conversation that is percolating up amongst our indigenous friends on this area. And then another project that I'm excited about that we are just getting underway with is a partnership with Dr. Kofi Boa. Dr. Boa is world renowned and from Ghana. He actually studied at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, but he went back, took some skills and then redirected in a different direction than a lot of the stuff the University of Nebraska teaches in the ag system, and created a no-till center. He developed a no-till center. And this no-till center and regenerative center allows him to train young prospective Ghanaian farmers with skills to regenerate the land and bringing in smallholder parcels of land that are those pathways to the land for these young people, and then pooling those folks together and selling to labels. It seems likely that in August, Dr. Kofi Boa will be here. And so we hope to be able to have furthering conversations on how we can develop some partnerships with Dr. Boa's expertise and some of the cultural expertise in East Omaha, in North Omaha. And so I want to invite you, especially if you're part of the Black community, to please join us and be a part of these conversations as they come forth. Because just like when we started Regenerate Nebraska, there's a lot of talking through and a lot of listening that needs to be done. And this will be an opportunity to do that and try to put together ways to make it easier to have those pathways to the land for people, no matter where they're really from, if their desire is that.
That sounds like a lot of amazing stuff, right? No More Empty Pots is busy. So lots of different things that we're doing. I'm trying to summarize them all. So one of the things that we've done since inception is doing community education. So we're working with both schools and community partners to do food growing education, whether that be startup gardens, home gardens, small farming and ag education, as well as nutrition and basic culinary skills. So the thought is that paired together, that these two things can help people be self-sufficient in growing their own food or learning more about sourcing locally and seasonally, which we know is proven to, one, help be more cost effective and also more nutritious, and putting those funds back into the local economy. Along the same lines with schools, we're involved with the Farm to School initiatives. So you'll be seeing us partner with them, getting materials out into schools, providing cooking demonstrations and different activities for kids, with the goal that farmers are connected to the school systems and become more of a pipeline as providers for food ingredients. With that, we also have some opportunities to help train staff to be able to manipulate those raw produce items that may come from farms straight to the schools that they're not used to preparing. So we'll do some culinary training there. We're growing our network. We are working currently with over 45 local farmers and growers in Iowa and Nebraska. They support our community harvest program, which includes a CSA, a community supported agriculture. It's like a produce box. So we aggregate this weekly and distribute this out to the community. What's awesome about this is that, of course, there's a full pay option, but it's also SNAP Double Up Food Bucks eligible. And so you can get that produce box, feeds about 4 for half off. And then we also are always looking for funding to continue to support anyone who does not fall into that category. But we do that all year round. So it's a little bit different than some other CSAs where winter is a little rough. We try to do a combination of preserving things from summer to continue to have things through the fall, and working both with our culinary program and local food entrepreneurs to continue to provide those services all winter. And then I think lastly, the thing that is probably the elephant in the room is us moving into the Highlander campus. Yay, greenhouse space to be activated hopefully in October, all things going well. And so a lot of things around food access, education and workforce opportunities will be happening in that building. So the top level will contain a greenhouse that is split both for production and then also for training purposes. So this is basic level youth all the way up to urban farmers and maybe some other things outside of food production will happen there. But then on the bottom level of that building, we will also have a micro market. So it's going to be really exciting to see the things grown upstairs be available in that community, walkable distance from that housing campus, to be able to come and purchase fresh local foods, as well as continuing to partner with our local and regional producers and food entrepreneurs for their products as well. So it's a multiplier effect. We're really excited about it, that we'll have training spaces so we can do demonstrations with the families, with the seniors, with the kids, right on site with the things that they're buying straight from that store. We're hoping that at some point in the future that it is payment agnostic. So like kiosks, like Dave and Buster style, doesn't matter what you come in here and pay with. So that'll be another way that we're trying to create equity around being able to access those foods. And so we're really excited about that. All things go well, we'll be in there in October. And then we'll be in full swing production with greenhouse stuff soon after.
Nice. Okay, as the food bank, I think what we are great is convening all of this. And I think that seeing everyone here as a resource for where we are getting our food and product from, we are distributing 10 million pounds of food every year. And so our goal really is to be intentional about where we're seeking this food from, where we're purchasing product from, how are we partnering, kind of that idea of who and where are we getting these products. We have a new food sourcer on our staff, and his job really is to connect more locally with local growers, producers, store owners that are more culturally affirming so that we can help support their stores and get their names out there. We are trying to get to rural or remote areas. When we think about food apartheid, thinking about where are locations where really we have been intentional about eliminating grocery stores or food access, and how do we get back in there? So that's really our focus. SNAP is a huge part of what we do. Tim is here from the Food Bank of Heartland. They run a huge SNAP outreach program where their job is to connect folks to SNAP so they can go and purchase these CSA boxes. Around 40% of what we distribute is fresh produce. And so we are trying to be really purposeful about what it is that we are sending out to our communities. How are we neighbor centric? How are we talking to our neighbors about what it is that they would like to see? How do we gain access to those items and really partner in our communities to make sure that what we're doing is meaningful, and it's not just from the lens of the staff who are on board, that we are purchasing product or gaining access through our own lens, that it really is the neighbors' lenses that we're inviting and being a part of that process.
Wow, right? This is all so exciting to see in this community. So briefly, if y'all could think of something that people can do to start getting involved.
I'd say consider the source. When you go to farmers markets, things like that, ask your farmer about what their growing practices are. If you can buy from a person of color and support farmers who are people of color, please do so. Read as a Black farmer in Nebraska. It was hard to find personally people of color to learn from. So Farming While Black by Leah Pinneman of Soulfire Farm. You're not gonna be able to see that. There we go. Is a really great one. It not only takes you from A to B about starting your own gardens, but it also gives you some cultural wisdom around Black and African farming practices. Braiding Sweetgrass is a really great one to help with you reconnecting with the earth and your relationship with the earth and plants. Some indigenous wisdom by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And Freedom Farmers by Dr. Monica White, in which he discusses the essential role that Black farmers played in the civil rights movement, as well as cooperatives.
Guess we'll just go down. I would echo the same sentiment of education. Also from a food bank standpoint, reaching out to the food bank to keep us in check, to ask those questions, to if you have a resource, we are always open to learning and listening. I think that's how we address some of these systems that are in place. We're willing to balance out what is our participation in some of these systems that are really oppressive. And I think for us, it's the opening our doors, making sure that we are a community center, that we're here to learn. We are here to really embed ourselves in the community and be a part of this process. So that would be what I would suggest.
Yes, education, education, education. I think the other thing that's important too is just keep talking about it. Casual conversations, formal conversations, don't be afraid to bring it up. One of the things that we're really trying to do at No More Empty Pots is leverage the Unite Us platform. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's a regional platform in which you can request and take in requests for resources. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is if we discover that people do have a food need, but they also have other resource needs for necessities, to get them connected to other agencies so that that can get handled, so that the food doesn't become one of those things that they have to make a choice about. And so just learning about people's needs as a whole, I think is really helpful in a situation where food is sometimes the place where corners are cut and people know that they need something different, but they know that that's like an easier thing to not have, and they should have it. So I would say talk to people, get to know them, get to know what they're about, and volunteering. So a lot of these organizations can't do what they do without volunteers. And that could be both in time, like labor hours, but also in knowledge and networking. There's many ways to give back in that sense. And so making a stronger ecosystem where we all know what each other's doing and we actually connect for the things that we are good at, so that there's not as much strain in the system, because I think we see that sometimes when, an organization will try to do everything, and there's plenty of us out there to share that load. So just continue to make those connections.
It would be appropriate for me to thank Black Men United. Black Men United was reached out wanting to know how to get agriculture to be a conversation in the sister city discussions between Jamestown and Ghana and Omaha and Nebraska. And so we were just in a position to be able to make the connection. And so that group was able to go meet Dr. Kofi Boa and actually get their feet on the ground on this no-till regenerative center. And so I want to thank Black Men United for, thinking about the food access issue and just allowing us to play a little role in getting things set up so these conversations can move forward. The things that can be done right now, right? Education's a strong, good education, strong education is the foundation of a strong community. I really believe in that. And so I appreciate the recommendations that have been made on how to start reading up. We need to look for those opportunities, but the Farm Bill is 2023. It's a Farm Bill year, and the Farm Bill impacts everyone. And we always talk about how the nutrition title is the biggest part of the Farm Bill, and how it allows for more accessibility of products. But we're not talking enough about some of the other areas that could impact you. One of the things that's going on right now as a discussion in the 2023 Farm Bill is education. And so the 3 prongs that we're asking for a little bit of reform around would be, number 1, making sure the Natural Resource Conservation Service technicians are just updated and looking at more indigenous thoughtfulness in the kind of products and practices that we're growing as we transform systems. So those technicians are going to be there to help existing farmers. But for the next set of farmers, all this land is about to transfer from the older generations. That's why it's so important to have more strategic conversations about pathways to the land. So how is that best going to work? It's going to best work if there's a culturally appropriate groups on the ground that can recruit and mentor and ensure that the pathways to the land from young aspiring farmers, no matter where they're from, becomes a successful one. And so you have to have the combination of the government entity and also on the ground groups. And this is gaining traction right now. And third, looking at how we develop curriculum. So I've talked to the State Board of Education, some folks that are on the board and heading that organization up, and come to find out the curriculum around nutrition and soil health and agriculture and growing food in general, it's just missing some things. And when you come to kind of peel away who wrote that curriculum, the special interests that are tied to big monopolies. And so we're not getting the whole story taught about how important these things are and how to go about this. And so there's an opportunity here to talk about how we have a focus and support for good curriculum, K through 12, and then also being able to support community colleges, Indian community colleges, HBCUs, universities, so that they have a role also as a next step to making sure that those skills are taught and available to young people that are aspiring farmers. And just to finish that, get back to that little thing about land access. How does it feel as 40 and younger to know that you're the first generation that really has no pathway to the land no matter what? Prices have elevated. And it was tough before, but it's gotten even tougher. There's going to have to be federal farm programs. There's going to have to be philanthropic support. There's going to have to be creative ideas and ways about chipping away at this, like what Dr. Kofi Boa is doing. And it's all of the above. There's not a silver bullet. But if land is not transitioned to the next generation of young, energetic, creative, and colorful people, then we are in trouble. We're in trouble for the food accessibility and nutrition. We're in trouble for our water. And we're in trouble for rising emissions. We will never be able to regenerate the soil in a place that stores and sequesters those emissions. And so this is the call of our young generation, is to have access to pathways to the land and have a chance to do this successfully. So the future of agriculture is solution oriented and addresses those challenges head on.
Awesome. And what better way to start but talking over these issues over food? And so Dominic will explain the next part of the day. Thank you.
With a couple of us. And so now I'm done since this recording started now. So I will wrap up with that. But those were some of the highlights that we had in our conversation. If anybody, did I miss anything? We talked about being aware of, the environment changes and how those things are going to be impacting food practices as well, and food in itself too. But yeah, that was pretty much it from our group, unless anybody else. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being brave. Okay, so Lachelle is going to share for the online crew.
Hi, so I was in an online group where I was pretending to be Nikki. And there was some great folks in the group. I'm just going to give a couple of shout outs: Caitlin, Lasagna, Amber, and Karina. We talked about a number of things. One of the things that came up a lot was the lack of supplies for people who want to do their own farming and grow their own food. Like, how do they get those supplies? Where do they get those supplies? Are there assistance programs for people who may not be able to afford them? The other thing we talked about was just the lack of education, and that most people know absolutely nothing about food and growing their own food, or anything about like the entire ecosystem, like what, how does your soil survive? We talked a lot about conservation, and then we had a wonderful discussion about the issues facing the Nebraska prison systems, which is the most overpopulated one in the country. And there was a conversation around how, when people are released, a lot of them get just the $100 and are basically told to figure things out for themselves. So there was a great discussion about how we could potentially do more with that population, especially while they're serving time and also upon release. And then there were some resources shared in our chat that I think will be shared in the larger chat. And then I did say, hopefully a lot of this stuff can go out in the wrap up email, but it was a great discussion. So it's really awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just going to hand it to this table. Thanks to the online group for your conversation. Yes.
Oh no. Well, I think we talked a lot about the lack of access and the kind of the loss of knowledge from folks who have, a farming history in their background, to today, where we are all a little divorced from our food sourcing. I think we circled the drain a little bit on capitalism and how there is not really a value placed on food production and learning that knowledge. And to Graham's point earlier, who is supporting kind of our institutions and that knowledge now, and where is that coming from? And just kind of asking the question, who benefits? Craig, do you have any?
No, that's pretty good.
I mean, we talked about so much. It's such a fascinating conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to bring it to this table and then we'll go to that table. Oh, okay, Miss Robbie, here you go.
Hi. A lot of what the other tables have said, we discussed among this group in terms of the importance of being educated. I think it was said earlier that you don't know what you don't know. And so our appreciation for the panel and the diversity among the panel, the education that you bring to us. And we talked about even the types of food when people go to the food bank and having an oversight committee or someone, many hands make light work, right? And so in looking at, I know even from where you derive your food from, sometimes it is expired. Sometimes there's a lot of sugar, sweets, cookies, cupcakes that go out to those families. And we talked about the obesity rate of our young children. Talked about even educating them in terms of the food, and parents oftentimes just grabbing what's quick. We talk about, you mentioned capitalism at this table over here, and just the quality and the selection of food that is presented to those that don't have. And so those are some of the things that we talked about.
Thank you all. And one last table over here. Thank you.
Hi there. We had lots to discuss at our table over here. We started off discussing the farmability of the land east of 72nd, and how sustainable that could actually be, what it would take to regenerate the soil in that area, and if it's possible. We talked about the lack of access to things like transportation, resources, and the lack of knowledge, particularly for immigrant communities who come here. They don't have access to their culturally appropriate foods. We talked about
African culinary heritage and how within the diaspora, there's this disconnect from the foods that we once ate and the foods that we no longer have access to, as well as knowing how to prepare the foods that we do have access to. We also talked about accountability and sharing in truth, because in truth, there's a lot of work that's being done in the community, but the credit is not being properly given to whom is doing the work all the time. So it's important to recognize who is doing the work. And I think to pull it all together, the big thing that we talked about was all the different pieces of everything that's going on. Like everybody in this room has different things that they're doing and how beautiful that is, and how it's just a matter of bringing everything together. And we talked about how that is really the key to sustainability. Each one teach one. You know something, I know something, you're doing something for the community, I'm doing something for the community. And we talked about just coming together in collaboration instead of competition, because that is the way to make what we're doing here in this room right now and as individuals sustainable. So I think that was, we talked about a lot of stuff. There's more, you know, but I'll be finished. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for sharing. We're going to kick it back to the panel for any final thoughts. And then I have just a few announcements at the end, but appreciate all of this rich conversation and for each of you being here. So any final thoughts? We have a mic there too. And not forget Stephanie online.
I wanted to, furthermore, picking up from where I left off, that the congressman for the city of Omaha, Don Bacon, he's on the agricultural committee. And so his comments early on, and, you know, we continue to hope for a really good conversation, you know, that can build on his comments about his priorities in the Farm Bill, but it's been around ensuring that crop insurance, you know, goes to the bigger farmers and looking at how we increase vaccines for these confinement system housed, you know, animals that are getting all the disease in them. But we need to be approaching him about this educational piece and making sure that there is support once again for that transition. And as a former, you know, brigadier general on this land accessibility issue and transitioning to the next generation, the nation's security is at stake here. If this is all investor owned and removed and profits are funneling out, and I mean, do you think that there's going to be biodiverse systems put in place if that's the system that we go under that's going to be able to reverse climate trends? I don't think so. And so this is a national security issue for the next generation, this land accessibility and creating those pathways. And who better than a former brigadier general to have these conversations with? So I encourage you, just want to leave you with encouraging you to engage on these issues too, because we're going to work on developing structures on the ground that move stuff around, but we also need to find the policies that can further support and allow this to happen quicker, because over the next 20 years when that land transitions, we are on a clock here. And so we need to take this seriously. And that means that we also have to do that little bit extra service and engage.
I would say, one, I just appreciate everybody's passion in the room. As I was eating my lunch, I just saw everybody so invested in the conversation. And so I think that's great. I think the biggest thing that I want you to take away is like, start small, because change is going to happen in how we talk and think about these things on a daily basis. One of the things that we're always challenged with in the organization is getting people who haven't had this type of access to food to understand that it's for them also. And so that can be a challenge within the community, just to get on that same mindset of, I can have this is for me, you know, just undoing maybe thoughts about what food can be. You know, there could be that grandma out there that's like, I'll never eat a vegetable, but why? Let's challenge grandma, you know, have those conversations though, because as kids are young and they need that input, they need that good food to thrive and grow, but also our senior population needs that to sustain health as well. And so it could be an attitude shift, but it could also be access to cooking utensils and food and heat. And so thinking about that whole thing. So again, I just encourage everybody to just talk about it, eat together, try new things, have experiences, break out of the bubbles and meet someone from a different culture and have their food and learn about that. There's so much joy around food and we all need it. And I think if we come from that place, trying to get at the systemic thing that's happening would be easier because it is a baseline level of understanding. We all need that food. So that's what I'd like you to take away.
That was great. Yeah, again, thanks for having me here. I think this was just as much a learning opportunity for myself. I would echo, there's a humanness in this, and I think that it's easy to distract from that, or when we think about large systems or how do we tackle these large systems that are in place, forgetting that it's somebody who just is sitting right across from you that's directly affected by this. And how do we bring back the humanness and that idea that this could be any of us experiencing food insecurity or oppression? And how do we bring back that humanness to let people know you do have a right for access? And how do we bring that access to you? How do we keep this conversation going? I think it's that idea of stay informed, be informed, get involved, and don't let this be it today. That how do you continue these conversations from here on forward?
I'd like to echo the start small. You don't have to have acres. You can grow in a container. Having just one pot that you grow tomato plant in, get your seeds February 11th, come to Fabric Lab March 3rd. Fabric Lab, Healing Roots, No More Empty Pots, and myself will be putting on a wisdom share on seed starting, where you can have all the materials you need to start seeds, leave your seeds there, and they'll grow them for you under grow lights. But every little bit helps. Getting involved in your food system in that way will help to change and shift thoughts and processes around how we access food.
Well, thank you all. Can we give a big round of applause to our panelists? Thank you to our interpreters. Thank you for helping interpret this and making it accessible, to Soul Brothers for bringing our food. Right now, Nikki is handing out evaluations. We would love for you to fill those out to make these better and better in the future. And speaking of the future, we have on your tables, please take one for our upcoming table talks. March 7th is about missing and murdered Indigenous women, and March 28th is about environmental racism. They're all hybrid events, so please take this and come to our future events. And also we have an event on March 21st, a free event open to the public with Cal Penn, who's an author, an actor, an activist, and that'll be at the Holland Center. And that's available online to reserve your seat. It is free. Ticket Omaha is where you can get them. Thank you all so much. Please help yourself to any food before you leave, and please continue to sow these seeds and work together. Thank you for coming.